In a white house in the suburbs of Connecticut, Claire sat at her computer again this morning. For Claire, who worked as a freelance illustrator, her home was also her workplace. Autumn sunlight streamed through the living room windows, and the maple tree in the yard was beginning to turn red. The quiet hours after her 8-year-old daughter Emily left for school were Claire's most productive time. 2 years ago, when Jason's mother Margaret moved in with them, Claire's life changed dramatically. Margaret's husband had died suddenly of a heart attack, and she could no longer manage living alone. Though initially bewildered, Claire tried her best to be a good daughter-in-law. Margaret was soft-spoken and always wore a modest smile. With her graying hair neatly pulled back, she embodied the image of a traditional American homemaker. Margaret actively helped with household chores. She was especially skilled at cooking, and every evening she'd stand in the kitchen preparing warm meals for the family. Roast chicken, pot roast, apple pie. All traditional American dishes, which Jason ate with nostalgia for his mother's cooking. On days when Claire was busy with work, Margaret would offer, "You have work to do, so I'll make dinner." Claire was grateful for this devotion and satisfied with the environment that allowed her to focus on her work. Recently, however, Claire had been suffering from unexplained health problems. At first it was mild headaches. Gradually it spread to nausea and fatigue. Getting up in the morning became difficult, and by afternoon she was overcome with intense exhaustion. She visited her regular doctor, but the test results showed nothing abnormal. The doctor looked at Claire through his glasses and said, "It's probably stress. Freelance work is irregular, you know. You need more rest." Jason was concerned about Claire's poor health at first, but gradually his attitude changed. "You're sick again," he'd say in a somewhat cold tone. Jason, who worked for an IT company, came home late often, saying his project was busy. When Claire asked about dinner time, she'd get only curt replies, "I don't know, eat without me." Only Margaret seemed to worry about Claire's condition. "It's okay, don't push yourself," she'd say gently, making her warm herbal tea. When Claire was lying down, Margaret would sometimes quietly cover her with a blanket. Claire felt both grateful and guilty about her mother-in-law's devotion. With such kindness being shown to her, she thought she needed to pull herself together. One evening, when the family of 4 was gathered around the dinner table, Claire noticed something odd about Jason's behavior. Her husband kept checking his smartphone, covering the screen with his hand as if hiding something each time he looked at it. "Are you busy lately?" she asked. Jason answered without looking up, "A work project is tough." There was none of the warmth he used to have in his tone. What made Claire even more anxious was the fact that her husband had recently increased his life insurance. She'd found a notice from the insurance company while sorting through mail. When she asked Jason, he answered matter-of-factly, "It's for the family, you know, in case something happens." The words sounded reasonable, but a small seed of doubt was planted in Claire's heart. Could he be having an affair? When that thought crossed her mind, she felt a tightness in her chest. Emily, too, had seemed somewhat listless lately. When she came home from school, she talked less cheerfully about her friends than before. Instead, she increasingly asked with concern, "Mom, are you okay?" Claire would smile and say, "Mom's fine," trying not to worry her daughter. But Emily's large eyes seemed to see through her mother's lie. Looking unconvinced, her daughter stared at Claire's face. One afternoon, unable to bear it any longer, Claire called her brother David. Her 40-year-old brother worked as an emergency physician at a hospital and had always been protective of his younger sister. Over the phone, Claire confided about her poor health and her husband's cold attitude. "I'm not feeling well, my husband's being cold, and nothing's going right." David's voice was calm. "Could be stress, but if you're worried, let's do some thorough tests. Come to my hospital anytime." His kind words made Claire feel a bit lighter. At the same time, though, she wondered if she was being overdramatic. Maybe it was just fatigue, maybe it wasn't serious enough to go to the doctor. Margaret seemed to have overheard Claire's phone conversation. When she hung up, her mother-in-law came into the living room and smiled gently. "You're working too hard, you need more rest." She placed her hand on Claire's shoulder. The hand was warm, filled with motherly kindness. While Claire was once again grateful for her mother-in-law's devotion, her doubts about her husband continued to smolder in the back of her mind. As dinner time approached, Margaret began preparing the meal in the kitchen. The sound of a knife cutting vegetables, a pot being placed on the stove. These everyday sounds echoed through the quiet house. In her workroom, Claire stared at an unfinished illustration. The client's deadline was approaching, but she couldn't concentrate. A headache started again, and nausea welled up. Claire closed her eyes and took a deep breath. Claire's poor health grew worse with each passing day. Symptoms were especially strong after dinner. Severe nausea, abdominal pain, dizziness. Sometimes she vomited in the bathroom, but no one else in the family complained of similar symptoms. Maybe I ate something bad, Claire thought, but it was strange that only she got sick when everyone ate the same food. One night, when Claire was lying in bed, Margaret knocked lightly and came in. In her mother-in-law's hand was a steaming mug. "I made special soup, this will make you feel better," she smiled kindly. It smelled like chicken soup. Claire gratefully drank the soup. The warm soup went down her throat and reached her stomach. But that night, Claire was struck by even more severe abdominal pain. She curled up in bed, moaning. Next to her, Jason lay with his back turned, not moving. Her husband's attitude became increasingly cold. One weekend morning, Claire gathered her courage to speak to him. "We haven't really talked lately, have we?" Jason didn't look up from his newspaper, answering only, "I'm tired from work." There wasn't a trace of his former kindness in that voice. Claire felt lonely. When they'd married 8 years ago, Jason had been a different person. He'd listened to her, laughed, supported her. Now he seemed like a stranger living in the same house. Only Margaret felt like Claire's sole ally. When she consulted about her relationship with her husband, her mother-in-law gently advised, "My son is having a hard time at work. Men don't show their stress outwardly. You need to support him." Hearing those words, Claire blamed herself. "Maybe my husband became cold because I'm not a good wife. I need to be more understanding." The thought made her chest tighten. Emily started coming to Claire's side as soon as she got home from school. She no longer went to friends' houses to play like before, staying close to her mother instead. When her daughter worried, "Mom, what are we eating today?" Claire would answer, "Grandma will make something." Emily's expression would cloud, her face becoming slightly anxious. When asked what was wrong, her daughter would shake her head saying nothing was wrong. But in those large eyes, there seemed to be a light suggesting she had something to say. One night, Claire finally looked at her husband's smartphone. While Jason was in the shower, she noticed the phone left on the living room sofa. Her heart pounded violently. This isn't right, it's an invasion of privacy. Even as she thought this, Claire's trembling hand picked up the smartphone. She knew the unlock code. It was their daughter's birthday. When she opened the messaging app displayed on the screen, there were exchanges with a friend. The date was 3 days ago. "Mom's acting strange, my relationship with my wife keeps getting worse." Claire gasped. What did that mean? Had her husband noticed something about his mother? Or did it mean something else? Claire tried to read more, but the subsequent messages had been deleted. What was her husband hiding? Doubts swirled in her mind. The sound of the shower stopped. Claire hurriedly put the smartphone back and headed to the kitchen. Her hands were shaking. When Jason returned to the living room in his bathrobe, Claire was drinking water at the sink. Her husband went to his room without a word. Watching his retreating back, Claire felt she knew nothing about her husband. The next morning, Claire decided to consult with her mother-in-law. In the kitchen where Margaret was preparing breakfast, Claire spoke hesitantly. "Jason seems to be worried about something lately. Have you noticed anything?" Her mother-in-law turned around and smiled while frying eggs. "My son is sensitive, he's been that way since childhood. You need to be more understanding." At those words, Claire blamed herself again. Maybe it really is my fault. Because I'm not a good wife. That afternoon at school, Emily was called by her homeroom teacher. Asked gently if something was worrying her since she hadn't seen herself lately, Emily answered in a small voice, "I'm worried about Mom." The teacher asked why. Emily hesitated for a moment, started to say, "Grandma." Then fell silent. When the teacher waited, Emily shook her head. "It's nothing, I'm okay." She smiled, but that smile was too heavy for an 8-year-old girl to carry. Claire's health deteriorated further week by week. She couldn't concentrate on work and sometimes failed to meet deadlines with clients. Making apologetic phone calls, Claire felt herself falling apart. She lost weight, and her face in the mirror was pale with deep circles under her eyes. One afternoon, Claire vomited blood in the bathroom. Dark red blood spread through the toilet bowl, and Claire panicked. "This isn't normal, something's wrong." With trembling hand she wiped her mouth and washed her face at the sink. The person in the mirror no longer looked like herself. When she returned to the living room, Margaret rushed over with concern. "You look terrible, are you okay?" Claire told her honestly. "I threw up blood." Her mother-in-law's face became serious. "Let's go to the hospital right away." But Claire shook her head. "Tomorrow, I'll have my brother examine me. I'll feel better if David sees me." Margaret showed a slightly confused expression, but immediately smiled kindly. "Yes, if it's your brother, you'll feel better." That night, Claire went to bed early. Her body felt heavy and it was painful to move. After the lights were turned off for a while, she heard the door quietly open. It was Emily. Her daughter, in pajamas and barefoot, slipped into Claire's bed. "Mom," she called in a small voice. Claire pulled her daughter into her arms. "What's wrong, can't you sleep?" Emily buried her face in her mother's chest, looking like she was about to cry. But she said nothing. After a long silence, Emily finally spoke. "It's nothing, Mom, I love you." Her voice trembled. Claire stroked her daughter's hair, answering, "I love you too." She felt Emily's small body shaking in small tremors. The next morning, Claire tried to get up as usual. But the moment she sat up, severe abdominal pain struck. The pain was so intense that Claire nearly screamed. Curled up on the bed, she tried to steady her breathing, but the pain came in waves. Margaret rushed into the room. "Are you okay? What's wrong?" Her mother-in-law's voice was frantic. "I'll call an ambulance, right away." As she reached for her cell phone, Emily suddenly burst into the room. "No!" her daughter shouted. The voice was stronger and more desperate than any Claire had heard before. Emily ran to Claire's bed and gripped her mother's hand. "Mom, go to Uncle David's hospital." Tears overflowed from her daughter's eyes and ran down her cheeks. "Please, go to Uncle David's." Claire looked at her daughter's face through the pain. "Why, what for?" Emily cried out through her tears, "Just go, please." Margaret intervened. "A nearby hospital would be faster, let's call an ambulance." But Emily looked at her grandmother and said firmly, "It has to be Uncle David." In her daughter's eyes was a strong determination Claire had never seen before. Claire sensed something in her daughter's unusual behavior. Even through the pain, a mother's intuition worked. "Okay, I'll go to David's." When she answered, Emily showed a slightly relieved expression. Claire decided to go to the hospital where her brother David worked. Margaret drove, while Claire lay in the back seat. Emily sat beside her mother, clutching Claire's hand the whole time. That small hand was sweaty and trembling. "I'll come with you," Margaret said. But Emily answered quickly, "Grandma, stay home and contact Dad when he gets back." Her grandmother showed a momentarily confused expression but immediately smiled kindly. "Yes, I need to contact Jason. I understand." As they got out of the car in the hospital parking lot, Margaret placed her hand on Claire's shoulder. "You'll get better soon, don't worry." The words were kind, but Claire felt something off. In her pain-clouded head, she couldn't figure out what it was. Emily pulled Claire's arm, urging, "Hurry, let's get to Uncle." When they entered the emergency entrance, David in his white coat rushed over with a surprised face. "Claire, what happened?" The moment her brother saw her face, his expression changed. "You look terrible," to the examination room immediately. David supported Claire's arm and had a wheelchair brought. Emily went along too. A nurse said to wait in the waiting room, but Emily shook her head. "I'm staying with Mom." There was something unyielding in her voice. In the examination room, David had Claire lie on the examination table. Palpating her abdomen, he asked when she'd started feeling unwell. "About 2 months ago," Claire answered. "At first it was mild headaches, but it gradually got worse. I threw up blood this morning." David's expression became stern. "I'll do blood tests and a gastric examination immediately. Call a nurse, tell them it's urgent." Blood collection began. Claire trembled with anxiety. Emily stood beside the examination table, holding her mother's hand. "Uncle, save Mom," she said in a small voice. That voice sounded like crying. David stroked his niece's head. "It's okay, I'll definitely save her." While waiting for test results, David called Emily into the hallway. Claire lay in the examination room, listening to their conversation. "Emily, why did you suddenly say to come here?" Her brother's voice was gentle but serious. Emily answered trembling. "Grandma was putting something in Mom's food." The voice was so small that Claire thought she'd misheard. David's voice changed. "What? Tell me more." Emily began speaking through tears. "Recently, I saw Grandma putting something from a small bottle into just Mom's food. When she noticed I was watching, she said it was vitamins for Mom's health, but I was scared." Grandma's eyes looked different than usual. On the examination table, Claire listened to her daughter's confession in disbelief. "Margaret was putting something in my food. That can't be. She was always kind and devoted." David's voice was tense. "When did you see this?" "About 2 months ago," Emily answered. "Mom kept getting sicker and sicker, but I couldn't tell anyone. I thought if I told Dad, he'd get angry at me for suspecting Grandma. I couldn't tell my teacher either. I thought no one would believe me." Silence fell in the hallway. Eventually the sound of David taking a deep breath could be heard. "Thank you for telling me, Emily. You're a brave girl. Now, let's go back to Mom." When they returned to the examination room, David's expression was hard. Claire looked at her brother's eyes and sensed something. "Brother, what you just heard?" David shook his head. "Let's wait for the test results now. We'll talk slowly after that." 30 minutes later, a lab technician brought the results. David received the envelope and checked its contents. At that moment, her brother's face went pale. "Why didn't you come sooner?" David shouted in a trembling voice. Claire tried to sit up in surprise. "Brother, what is it?" David showed Claire the test result paper with shaking hands. "Chemical substances were detected in your blood. Components found in bleach and detergents. This wasn't accidental ingestion. You've been taking them continuously. Her brother's voice trembled with anger and fear. Claire couldn't understand. What do you mean? I haven't drunk anything like that. David grabbed Claire's shoulders. Someone mixed it into your food. Deliberately, little by little. Claire's mind went blank. That can't be. Who would? David made an immediate decision. I'm calling the police right away. And you need to leave that house today. The culprit is still in the house. Claire was confused. The culprit? Who? Could it be Jason? My husband trying to. Tears welled up. Emily cried out through her tears. It's not Dad, it's Grandma. Grandma was putting strange things in Mom's food. I saw it. Her daughter's voice was desperate. Claire couldn't believe it. Margaret. But she was always so kind. She worried about me. She even made me special soup. As she said that, Claire realized. Special soup. After drinking that soup, her symptoms always got worse. David gripped his sister's hand. Claire, listen. This isn't a coincidence. It's attempted murder, planned and deliberate. Medically speaking, if this had continued for another month, you would have died. Those words pierced Claire's heart. The police arrived. David conveyed the test results and Emily's testimony. A middle-aged detective listened with a serious expression and said, "We'll search your home immediately. The victim needs to be hospitalized. This is a serious case." Claire was taken to a hospital room. On white sheets, she sat in a daze. I can't believe it. Margaret. Why? What did I do? Tears wouldn't stop. Emily held her mother's hand. Mom, I'm sorry. I should have said something sooner. But I was scared. Claire hugged her daughter. You did nothing wrong. Thanks to you, Mom was saved. Thank you, Emily. Mother and daughter cried together in an embrace. David returned to the hospital room. The police are searching the house. I contacted Jason. He's coming right away. Claire looked up at her brother. Did Jason know? Is my husband an accomplice too? David shook his head. I don't know. But that message on his phone, remember? Maybe he noticed something. But maybe he didn't have the courage to face the truth. The hospital room door burst open forcefully. Jason rushed in, his face drained of color. Claire, is it true? My mother. Her husband's face was ashen, his eyes filled with terror. Claire stared at her husband. Did you know that I was being poisoned? Jason clutched his head. No, but I thought Mom was acting strange lately. She was abnormally interfering with you. But I never imagined she'd do something like this. Her husband's voice trembled. I should have noticed. I should have protected you. Claire said quietly, but you didn't protect me. You chose your mother over me. At those words, Jason couldn't answer. Heavy silence filled the hospital room. Emily looked at her parents and began crying again. The police search was thorough. From Margaret's bedroom, shocking evidence was discovered one after another. In a small box hidden in the back of her closet were small bottles of bleach, household detergent, and containers with non-medical chemical substances. Furthermore, her laptop revealed internet search history about the effects of poisons and lethal doses. Most shocking was the diary hidden in her bedside drawer. The diary chronicled Margaret's twisted feelings. If only that woman weren't here, my son would come back to me. Jason was all mine. That woman took everything. One day's entry read, mixed in a little more today. If I increase the amount, it should work faster. She should be hospitalized soon. Then my son will need me. The words, written in neat handwriting, were filled with madness. Detectives seized the evidence and confirmed Margaret's whereabouts to arrest her. She was in the living room at home, knitting as if nothing had happened. When police showed the warrant and announced her arrest, Margaret looked surprised. This must be some mistake. I haven't done anything. She tried to stand, but the detective grabbed her arm. Margaret Montgomery, you're under arrest on suspicion of attempted murder. You have the right to remain silent. Even hearing the detective's words, Margaret looked incredulous. This is some kind of mistake. I was just helping my son's wife. She wasn't feeling well, so I was nursing her. But the detective mercilessly handcuffed her. In the police station interrogation room, Margaret stubbornly denied everything at first. I didn't do anything. That girl's poor health has another cause. Stress or something. But when the detective confronted her with the test results and diary contents, her expression changed. Emily's testimony was also read aloud. Your granddaughter testified that she witnessed you mixing something into meals. Margaret's face twisted. That child doesn't understand anything. She's just a child. But the detective continued pressing. Why did you do this? After a long silence, Margaret finally spoke. My son was everything to me. After my husband died, my son was my only reason for living. We had a special relationship. But after that woman came, everything changed. My son stopped looking at me. Phone calls decreased. When I visited, he said he was busy. Margaret's voice was filled with resentment. If that woman got sick, my son would need me. I'd accompany her to the hospital, take care of her. I thought we could go back to the way it was before, just mother and son. The detective asked in a cold voice, did you intend to kill her? Margaret shook her head violently. No, I only meant to weaken her. Hospitalize her, put her in a state requiring long-term care. Then my son would have to take time off work to nurse her. He'd be with me. But I never meant to kill her. Really? However, the medical examiner's report was read aloud. Based on the amount of chemical substances detected in the victim's body and the duration of ingestion, if intake had continued, there was an extremely high probability she would have developed multiple organ failure and died within 1 month. Margaret turned ashen. I didn't mean that. It was for my son. I just wanted my son back. She covered her face with both hands and collapsed in tears. At the hospital, Claire and Jason were having a difficult conversation. David and Emily waited outside the hospital room. Jason sat in a chair, holding his head. I felt something was off about Mom. She was abnormally kind to you. The sicker you got, the more alive Mom seemed. But I didn't want to believe she could do something like this. Claire said quietly, you noticed but didn't protect me. You saw me suffering. Jason looked up. I'm sorry, I was weak. I didn't want to suspect my mother, so I ran from reality. Every time you complained about feeling sick, I got irritated because somewhere in my heart I sensed the truth. But I couldn't face it. Tears overflowed from Claire's eyes. I can't trust you anymore. The most important thing for a married couple is protecting each other. But you chose your mother over me. Jason said desperately, no, I love you. I really do. But Claire shook her head. Even if you love me, you didn't protect me. That's everything. The hospital room door opened and Emily came in. Her daughter's eyes were swollen from crying. Are Mommy and Daddy getting divorced? At that small voice, both were at a loss for words. Claire hugged her daughter. We don't know yet. But right now, I need time. Mommy and Daddy both love you. Please believe that. Emily looked up at her parents. What will happen to Grandma? Jason spoke heavily. Grandma did something bad. So she'll be punished. Emily nodded slightly. Did Grandma hate me? Claire stroked her daughter's head. No, that's not it. Grandma was sick. Mentally sick. So she couldn't make proper judgments. But it's not your fault. Emily buried her face in her mother's chest and cried. Several months later, a trial was held. The courtroom was packed with observers. Margaret sat in the defendant's seat, haggard and looking down. Her lawyer argued she'd been mentally unstable since losing her husband. But the prosecution proved from the diary and internet search history that this was a premeditated crime. Claire took the witness stand. With Jason and David watching from the gallery, she spoke quietly. She tried to kill me. But what hurt most was being betrayed by someone I'd accepted as family. I trusted her. My daughter loved her. And yet. Claire's voice trembled. Margaret's turn came. She said through tears, I'm sorry. But I loved my son. That was all. My son was everything. The judge said in a stern voice, that's not love, that's control. You tried to rob your son of happiness and destroy his family. On the day of sentencing, the courtroom fell silent. The judge read the verdict. The defendant is sentenced to 8 years in prison for attempted murder. Margaret nearly collapsed. As she was led away supported by officers, she looked toward Jason. Son, forgive me. Forgive your mother. But Jason remained looking down, saying nothing. After the trial ended, Claire and Jason talked outside the courtroom. Let's separate, Claire said. Jason nodded. I understand. Right now I don't deserve to be with you. It will take time to regain your trust. Jason looked into his wife's eyes. I'll wait. However many years it takes. Until someday you'll accept me as your husband again. Claire didn't answer, but complex emotions showed on her profile. A year passed. Claire and Emily lived in a small house they'd rented near her brother David's apartment. The window looked out on a park, and Emily was regaining time to play with friends. Claire's health completely recovered, and work was going well. New clients increased, and her career as an illustrator was more fulfilling than before. Emily regained her brightness but attended counseling once a week. Talking about that day was still painful. But little by little, her emotional wounds were healing. At school too, she smiled more and her relationships with friends were good. Just sometimes, she'd have nightmares at night and come to her mother's bed. Jason saw Emily twice a month. Father and daughter spent time at the park or went to movies. It was awkward at first, but little by little their relationship was being repaired. Jason completely cut ties with his mother and while receiving counseling himself, confronted his dependence on his mother. He also reconsidered his company work, searching for a way of life that valued time with family. One autumn afternoon, Jason called Claire. I want to talk. They met at a quiet cafe. Jason bowed deeply. I was weak. I blindly believed my mother and couldn't protect you. I saw you suffering but turned away from the truth. I want to spend my life making amends. Claire answered while holding her coffee cup with both hands. I've thought a lot this past year too. In a way, you were also a victim of your mother. Raised from childhood with twisted affection. But still. Claire chose her words. It will still take time to regain trust. Jason nodded. I'll wait, however many years. Until the day you and Emily need me. They quietly drank their coffee. They weren't the married couple they'd been before, but the relationship wasn't completely broken either. Something new was slowly beginning to sprout. 2 years later. Claire, Jason, and Emily were sharing dinner one holiday afternoon at David's house. The separation continued, but they were beginning to reconnect as a family. Laughter returned to the table, and Emily could comfortably lean on both her father and mother. After the meal, Emily asked, "Will Mommy and Daddy live together again?" Claire and Jason looked at each other. Claire answered gently, "We don't know yet. But we're family. That won't change." Jason added, "Real family isn't just blood ties. It's protecting each other, respecting each other. That's what family is." David nodded too. Because Emily had courage, Claire was saved. Family protects each other. Emily said proudly, "I protected Mom, didn't I?" Claire hugged her daughter. "You're my lifesaver." What real family means is protecting each other like this. Stroking her daughter's hair, Claire looked out the window. The sunset was beautiful. Margaret was serving her sentence in prison. Jason never visited once. In her cell, she continued to justify herself, saying it was for her son, but no one came to visit. Even after release, her relationship with her son wouldn't return. She had lost everything. Claire and Jason slowly repaired their relationship over 3 years. They didn't return completely to what they'd been, but began walking as a new form of family. Once trust is broken, it doesn't return easily. But over time, it can be carefully rebuilt. Emily wrote in a school essay, "Family isn't blood, it's people who protect each other." I learned the meaning of real family. And David told his colleagues, "Because Emily had courage that day, my sister was saved." I'll never forget the importance of listening to children's voices. Real family isn't blood ties or in-law relationships, but relationships of protecting and respecting each other. Dependence and control are never love. Claire and her family learned that truth along with pain.